Hi everyone, my name is Jaimie Yue. I'm a registered dietitian, nutritionist. I'm the founder of nutritious, which is the name of my private practice where I do one-on-one consultation and where I give also presentation. I hope you are well and keeping safe during these difficult times. I originally was planned to giving this presentation at the Atwater Library sometime in May, but given the current circumstances, we've still decided to go ahead and give this presentation online. So I hope you find it useful and relevant for you. We're going to talk about how to eat well on a budget. So I'm going to talk about strategies to help you maintain a healthy diet while still be mindful of your wallet. So first of all, I'm going to talk about what you need in a day. So knowing what foods you have to eat, knowing what foods you have to buy, that's going to give you a foundation to know what foods you need to buy, so you know a bit how to save money at the grocery store. And then for the whole process of the actual purchasing of the food, I've broken it down into 3 steps. So the first step would actually be the before the purchase of the food. So we're going to talk about how to plan your meals during the week. So having a plan that's going to help you to know what foods to buy so you don't overbuy and spend more money thereafter. So we're gonna for the first step, we're gonna talk about how to meal plan, and then for the second step, we're gonna talk about strategies of how to shop more smartly at the grocery store, again, to be able to save money there. And the third step would be how to increase the shelf life of your food so as to minimize the food waste. So we're going to talk about a better storage of food. We're going to talk about how to recycle your foods into different meals so you don't get fed up of eating the same foods over and over again. So that's a way to minimize food waste as well. So without further ado, we're going to talk about your nutritional needs. So first of all, we're going to talk about a healthy meal. You have a plate here, which we call like a healthy plate. It was taken from the latest Canada's Food Guide, which was released in early 2019, so last year. So we're going to try to have this kind of plate for at least like twice a day, so lunch and dinner. So here you see we don't have specific portions, unlike the previous Canada's Food Guide. We talk more in terms of proportions. So here we have half of the plate filled with vegetables and fruits. And we don't emphasize on a specific vegetable and fruit. We try to go for like a variety of vegetable and fruits because one vegetable or one fruit will not contain all the nutrients. And oftentimes we hear about superfoods. So for example, a few years back, we were talking a lot about kale. Kale was called like a superfood. It was very popular and everyone was buying it because they thought it would contain all the nutrients. In fact, kale is very nutritious. It contains vitamin C, it contains vitamin K, but it would lack vitamin A, which is needed for healthy skin as well as healthy eyes. So to get all the nutrients, it's very important to not just focus on one vegetable or fruit, but to have a variety of colors on your plate, or even like on a daily basis, like trying to vary the colors on the plate. The other quarter of the plate here, you have the protein foods. The protein foods could actually be one of the most expensive ingredients in your grocery basket. Where do you get proteins? You will get it from the obvious sources like meat, beef, veal, pork, in white meats such as fish, chicken, turkey, seafoods, but you also get vegetarian sources of protein such as beans, lentils, chickpeas. You get proteins in tofu, in soybean products, but also in dairy products such as here, like you're going to see yogurt, milk. They do contain proteins as well. Nuts and seeds are vegetarian sources of proteins, and eggs are really good sources of proteins as well. Later on, we're going to talk about how to minimize the cost of buying protein foods. We're going to talk about how we can make use of vegetarian sources of proteins more often, so we can reduce the cost of our grocery bill. And the rest of the quarter of the plate here, we have whole grain foods. So they provide us with carbohydrates, which is our main source of energy. And we're going to try to choose whole grain cereal products because they give us fiber, and fiber fill us up a bit more. It's a bit more satiating, so we won't get hungry like soon after eating a meal. So that's another strategy of minimizing on food purchases as well. It's to go for the whole grain products. So whole grain products would include whole grain rice, brown pasta, brown bread. But at the same time, you know, like sometimes it's okay to eat, let's say, like a white baguette, white bread from time to time, because we don't eat just nutrients, we eat for pleasure as well. So like mixing a bit your food intake, giving yourself a good variety, sometimes including the more refined carbohydrates, that's okay from time to time as well. So we're going to dive into the strategies of saving money in terms of purchasing food. The step one would be to focus on meal planning for the week. So here I have a template of a menu that I usually use every week to plan my meals. It could seem a bit overwhelming to plan for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and 2 or 3 snacks in the day. So how I do it on my end and how I advise my clients to do it is to focus more on the dinner. So knowing what you're gonna make for the week every single day, then you can just double the recipe. So you can have the dinner, if you can have leftovers from the dinner for lunch for the next day. And in terms of breakfast, you can just focus on 1 or 2 types of breakfast and then just do like a rotation. That's gonna be simple and easy and stress-free as well for you. So, and even for breakfast, it could be something simple like just having some essentials in your pantry, such as oats or breakfast cereals. You could have bread in the freezer. So those are like staple foods you could keep at home, and that's gonna be like easy ideas of breakfast. Then for dinner, it could be just like planning every day like around a protein source. So for example, like one day you could choose fish, another day you could choose chicken, another day it could be like a vegetarian meal such as a lentil soup. So you can plan your meals around a protein source, and then you can think about like a carbohydrate, a whole grain food on the side. And usually that's easier. It could be rice, quinoa, just bread. It could be whole grain crackers, so something very easy. And then the veggies on the side. It could be like a soup, or it could be a salad, or it could be like chopped veggies in your dish. So just a few tips and tricks when you plan your meal, when you plan your menu for the week. Try to plan for at least 2 meals containing vegetarian sources of proteins, because Any meats, fish, chicken would be a bit more expensive. So trying to go more for eggs, beans, lentils, those are much cheaper sources of proteins, and it's gonna help you reduce your grocery bill significantly. In terms of maximizing the nutrients in your diet, trying to vary the colors of vegetables and fruits during the week. You can also go according to the seasons. For sure, like seasonal vegetables and fruits, they are cheaper, but also they will contain more nutrients. At least half of your cereal product should be made of whole grains. As I said, it's going to maximize your fiber intake, so it's going to be more satiating. Then we tend to look more less for food after eating, because it keeps us full for longer. Trying also to double or even triple the recipes that you're making sometimes, because you can freeze them and have a backup meal, let's say like sometime when you don't feel like cooking, or you're lacking time. Oftentimes, if we don't feel like cooking, then we will go out to eat, then it's going to be a bit more expensive. But if you have backup meals in the freezer, you can just defrost it and it's ready to go. So when you do your menu, it's important to have some recipes in mind, and to have some recipes which are budget friendly but still nutritious. So here I've put some examples of budget friendly recipes, and those recipes, if you want, you can just email me or email Natalie, and we can send some recipes to you so you can try to make them. So here I have a shepherd's pie. Traditionally, it's made with ground meat, which could be a bit more expensive. So instead of using ground meat, we can use lentils. It's going to be the same color, and it's going to be as rich in protein, richer in fiber. So it's going to be even more satiating, and it's going to be super rich in iron as well. It's going to be very similar to ground meat. If you're a bit more reluctant to substitute 100% of your meat with the lentils, you can do half ground beef, half lentil, and you're still gonna get value for your money. So here we have a bit the same, using the same principle. So we have a meat sauce. So you can substitute the meat with lentil, and you can go with canned lentils or even the dried ones, and then you can soak it and boil it. That's going to be even cheaper than the canned beans. So it's going to be a good source of protein. Again, here, like, you can do half as well, half meat, half lentils. You can also use tofu as a protein source. It's going to be a great substitute for your meat. Tofu doesn't really have any taste. It's pretty bland in taste. So what matters is, like putting the sauce, like the herbs, the spices, and your dish is going to be very flavorful. Here we have like a vegetable stir fry where we added tofu instead of meat. And you can serve it with rice, so you're going to have that healthy plate we were talking about before. Other recipes here, you have a fish pie. So instead of using fresh fish, which is for sure like much more expensive, you can use the canned fish. They are as nutritious as the fresh version, and you can also use frozen fish, which is for sure cheaper than the fresh fish. You can make use of canned fish to make fish patties. Like here we have salmon patties, and it would be like quite a waste here to use fresh fish, because fresh fish, you want to use it more for like dishes where it's served as a whole fillet instead of of the fish being broken down into small pieces. So for those recipes, it's actually better if you make use of canned fish. So again, like, we can provide you with those recipes by emailing them to you if you provide us with your email address. Here we have fish fingers. So here we can make use of frozen fish, and it's going to be very tasty. It's going to be very nutritious, even more nutritious than the fish fingers that we buy in boxes in the freezer section at the grocery store. You can also make use of beans to make here like a bean salad. Very easy, simple, because when we think of cooking, we also have to think about recipes which are easy to make, because if you always think about recipes which take time, then it's going to be discouraging for you to cook at home. So you will be more tempted to go for like restaurant foods, or even the ready-made foods at the grocery store. Here I have a recipe of a one-pot meal. Again, like, sometimes we can be discouraged to cook because there's so many pots and pans that we dirty and have to wash after, so it becomes less tempting to cook. So here I have a recipe of a one-pot meal where you put everything in the same pot, and you have like one healthy, nutritious meal. So you don't need to use like several pots and pans. It's very easy and very stress-free, and it takes less time to make. So that recipe, you can find it on my website, or again, as I said, you can email us and we'll forward the recipe to you. So how to meal plan. I often use flyers to have ideas of what to cook. That's one strategy where you can save a lot of money. So for example, I always try to look for in the flyers for the stores where they have sales on the proteins. Then I would go to that store and do my purchases there. So you can always look at the flyers. You have a lot of applications where you can have the flyers of all the stores in one application. So those applications, they are called Flip or Reebie. Then you know like where you can go to buy your ingredients. Usually just be careful, because oftentimes stores would use a lot of marketing strategies to make you buy, and in one flyer there's usually like 5 to 10 pages, but you'll get the biggest deals on the first and the last page of the flyer. So the middle pages usually contain foods, ingredients, which are usually at the regular prices. So try to focus on the first and the last pages to know what deals you're gonna get at the store. So then what you do, once you know what meals you're gonna cook for the week, you can make your grocery list. You can also use coupons. You can go on those websites, smartcanucks.com or websaver.com or even save.ca. You can either download some coupons, or on some websites you can just subscribe and then they send you the coupons by mail. So that's another way to save money while doing your groceries. Very important, before you actually make your grocery list, try to do an inventory of what you have at home already, so you don't buy double or triple the ingredients that you already have, because then it could go to waste. So make an inventory of what you have in the freezer, in the pantry, in the fridge, and then what you're lacking in terms of ingredients, you can just write it down on your list. So now you have a plan, you have your list, you're ready to go shopping, and that's step 2. So how to save at the supermarket? First of all, is to eat before. Why? It's because if you go on an empty stomach, your stomach is growling while you are at the grocery store, you will want to buy everything. And if you buy everything, for sure, it's going to cost you more. So try to have either a snack or a meal before going to the grocery store. Know your prices. So if you buy over and over again, like staple foods, try to make a list of the prices of those staple foods that you regularly buy, because sometimes like some grocery stores will have prices which are higher than other grocery stores, even though they might be on special. So try to know your prices for your staple foods first, and you can even keep track on a list. Try to compare unit price. So what do I mean by that? So if you look more closely on the price tag of the food, you're gonna see there's always the price per 100 gram here. So this is the same for the same product. It's for lettuce. So you see, if we look at the total price here, like it's the same for both types of lettuce. But if you look deeper here in smaller characters, you're gonna see the price per 100 gram. So here you have a lettuce which is bigger in size. It's 227 grams versus here you have 142 grams. So you're gonna actually get more for your money, more value for your money here by buying this lettuce. And you can just simply look at the unit price here. So it's almost twice the price than this lettuce actually. So just pay attention to this while shopping. Try to buy generic brands instead of the more popular brands. For example, here we have the brick of cheese, and if we buy the more popular brand, the Quebec, it's gonna be for the unit price $2.20 for 100 grams. But if you buy a more generic brand, like each supermarket has its own generic brand, and it's going to be usually cheaper, unless for sure if the popular brand is on special, then that's going to be the exception to the rule. So how to save at the supermarket? It's also to avoid pre-prepared foods. For example, if you buy the fish fillet, you're paying for someone to do it for you, to fillet the fish for you. So it's gonna be more expensive. If you buy the chopped vegetables, yes, it's a bit more simple to prepare at home. It decreases the preparation time, but you're gonna pay more for the chopped veggies. Same for the grated cheese. It's gonna be a bit more pricey. So if you have time to do it at home, try to buy foods which haven't already been prepared, and it's gonna be cheaper. Always try to check out the top and the bottom shelves, because oftentimes companies would pay for the products to be at eye level, so they would maximize the purchase, like the buying power of consumers. So always try to check the top and the bottom shelves, and sometimes you can find good deals for the products that you need to buy. So now we're going to go into each food category to see how we can save money when buying those foods. In terms of vegetables and fruits, always try to buy them in season, because they're going to be less expensive and they're going to be more nutritious as well. For example, now in springtime, what's going to be more seasonal, it's going to be cabbage, there's carrots, you're going to get asparagus now are very much in season, so they're going to be a bit cheaper. In terms of cereal products, for sure, like if you go with breakfast cereals, they tend to be a bit more expensive, especially if you buy cereals which contain nuts. So from time to time, you can go for oats. Oats are much cheaper. So here we have a comparison of a famous breakfast cereal, and we have a brand of oats, and you see it's gonna be almost 3 times more expensive to buy the breakfast cereals. So you can go for oats from time to time, and even with oats you can make granola, so it could be very versatile. You can make overnight oats as well if you don't want to eat it hot. So it's a very versatile ingredient that you can use as a snack or even for breakfast. When you buy cereal products, try to buy them in bulk because it's going to be less expensive if you buy in a bigger format. Here we have a 10 pounds bag of rice, and we have here a smaller format of rice, which is 2 pounds, and you see here like the price, the unit price per 100 gram is it's going to be lower than the price here for a smaller format. So for sure, like you have to know what you need, what you regularly eat, because if you're one person and it's going to take you forever to finish a bag of rice, and sometimes maybe it could go bad, so like try to match it with what you need, of course. In terms of vegetables and fruits, trying to go with the frozen or the fresh ones, it's always a big debate. Some people think, like it's as nutritious to buy the frozen ones. Some people say we need to buy the fresh ones. So the truth is the frozen ones are as nutritious as the fresh ones, or even sometimes even more nutritious, especially when the vegetables are not in season. Why? It's because when they are not in season and you eat the fresh vegetables and fruits, they're usually harvested when they're not ripe enough, because it would take maybe like 2-3 weeks for the vegetables to get here to Canada. So by the time it would get here, then they would ripen. But when they're harvested, when they're still unripe, the vegetable or the fruit won't have time to develop all the nutritional value, all the nutrients. So sometimes it's even better to get the frozen fruits during winter time, or when the vegetable or the fruits aren't in season, because when they're frozen, they are harvested at their peak ripeness, so they develop all the nutritional value, and then they're frozen. So freezing actually at low temperature helps to preserve all the nutrients. So frozen vegetables could be a very good option, and sometimes it could be cheaper as well. So here we have spinach compared to the fresh version, which could be a bit more expensive when it's not in season. So you see here, it could be up to like 3 times less expensive than the fresh version. Trying to buy vegetables and fruits with a longer shelf life, especially now, like we can't go to the grocery store as often as we would want. We can focus on buying vegetables which would last us for longer. So here are some examples of vegetables which have a longer shelf life. So for example, you have cabbage, beets, carrots, squash, sweet potatoes, oranges, even apples they would keep for quite a while. So they would actually keep for like 3-4 weeks. If you store them well in the fridge, they could be stored for even longer. In terms of meats and substitutes, we're going to try to go for cheaper non-meat protein sources, as we said earlier. Here I put a comparison of the different non-meat sources. So here we have beans, we have lentils. One portion, which is actually 100 grams, would cost you 50 cents for one portion of canned lentils. It could be even cheaper if you buy the dried ones and then you cook it yourself. In terms of tofu here, you see it's a bit more expensive than the legumes, than the pulses, but cheaper still than the meat. And here I've chosen ground meat because it's the cheapest, one of the cheapest sources of meat, the cheapest meat, sorry. But you see still the cheapest, one of the cheapest meats will be more expensive than buying the non-meat protein sources. And if you do buy meats, trying to go for cheaper cuts of meat. Here, for example, if you go with chicken thighs with the skin on, it's going to be cheaper. If you buy the deboned skinless chicken thigh, it's going to be a bit more expensive. And if you buy the chicken breast, it's going to be much more expensive. So maybe trying to see what kind of recipes you're going to make and adapt your buying according to what you need for the recipe. And you're going to really be saving money here. In terms of fish, we have here canned, frozen, and fresh fish. And I've put the price for each type of fish. So you see here the canned fish, whether it's sardines, salmon, or tuna, it's gonna be much cheaper. It comes down to 93 cents per 100 grams. For the frozen fish, it's a bit more expensive than the canned fish, but it's cheaper for sure than the fresh fish. And if you do buy fresh fish, I would advise you to go with the whole fish, because again, you're paying someone to fillet the fish for you. So it's going to be a bit more expensive if you buy the fillet compared to the whole fish that you can fillet yourself if you have time. Same goes for other meats. For example, if you buy like a whole chicken, it's going to be cheaper than buying the pre-cut chicken. For the dairy products, you can buy the yogurt in like a bigger format. You see here, it's going to be cheaper than buying the yogurts in individual formats. For sure, like it's a bit less practical because you have to portion it out and you might have more dishes to wash at the end of the day, but it's going to save you money, and it's also good for the environment because you're minimizing the packaging. In terms of milk, you can also make use of powdered milk from time to time. We tend to forget about powdered milk because it's not something that we use often, but it could be an economical way of substituting for fresh milk. So you see here, it costs just 25 cents to make 1 cup of 250 milliliters of milk, whereas here you get you're going to pay 36 cents for a cup of fresh milk. So it's going to help you also if you don't want to go to the store too often these days. So the powdered milk will be very helpful because it can be stored for a longer period of time. You can store it in the freezer once you've opened the package, and it's going to last you for longer if you store it in the freezer. And you can also use it for cooking. You can use it to make a white sauce. You can use it to make, in your baking, to make muffins. You won't really taste the difference. Now we're going to move on to step 3, you already have your foods at home, but oftentimes they go bad because we haven't stored them well, or we've been eating the same foods over and over again, so we're fed up, so we throw them out. So that's food that we waste, and that's money that we're throwing out as well. Actually, in the whole world, we waste about a third of the foods that's produced for human consumption. So a third is actually quite a lot. So we need to focus on how to reduce food waste. So we're going to talk about strategies to decrease the food waste. So oftentimes we tend to look at the best before dates. And I just want to clarify what's a best before date. It's not actually an indication of the food safety, but it indicates the freshness of the product. So for example, if my yogurt is a few days past the best before date, it doesn't mean you'll get sick if you eat it, but it might be less fresh in terms of taste, for example, but it would still be safe to consume after like a few days. You have to differentiate between the best before date and the expiry date. Expiry date is actually the date where it's actually safe to consume the food, and that's when you should really follow the expiry date. But if it's just a best before date, then a few days, even a few weeks later, it's quite safe to consume. In terms of expiry dates, the only foods which will have an expiry date, it's more like supplements such as Ensure, like Boost, those liquid supplements that could replace a meal, the meal replacements. So those, they have an expiry date. Powdered milk for babies, those we have an expiry date, but usually foods that you find at the grocery store, they will have a best before date and not an expiry date. So how long past the best before date can we safely consume the food? So it depends on where you store it. As for example, if we look at milk, it can be safely consumed for up to 1 week past the best before date. For the yogurt, it could be safely eaten up to 10 days after the best before date. And for the soft cheese, up to 2 weeks. Hard cheeses such as cheddar or Parmesan cheese, up to 6 months. Eggs, 3 to 4 weeks. Chicken and fish, 2 days. And red meat, 3 to 5 days. But that changes if you put it in the freezer. So for example, if you put your yogurt or your grated cheese in the freezer section, it can be stored forever. For sure, like you're gonna get the taste and the texture maybe, which will be altered. It won't taste as fresh, but it would still be safe to consume. Even for the eggs, if it's beaten up, the raw meats, the breads could be stored for a long time, but they would be more prone to getting freezer burn, which will alter the taste of the foods. So how to minimize food waste? It's also to better store our food, because sometimes if we don't store them well, it goes to waste. So I've put here like a few foods, and then we're going to talk about how to better store them so we can increase their shelf life. So here we have peanut butter, or any nut butter. It could be almond butter or sunflower seed butter. It's better stored in the fridge because nuts, they do contain fat, and if you store them in the pantry, the fat can go rancid. So you'll get the smell of paint, and you know it went bad. So the best way to store your nut butters it's actually in the fridge, and it could be stored for 3 to 6 months. Same goes for your nuts and your seeds. It could be stored in the fridge or even in the freezer for that matter. For the oil, it's important to store them in the pantry because the fat gets oxidized by light. So if you leave the oil on the counter, it could go rancid. So in the pantry, it's dark and it's a bit cooler inside, so it could go up to 2 years. You can also keep them in the fridge if you wanted. Sometimes it might separate, like the oil might separate, but it's a personal choice if you wanted to keep it a bit longer. For the potatoes, you can store them in the pantry because they need to be stored in a dark place where it's not too humid. So it could be stored up to 2 to 3 months in a dark place. How to store your leafy greens. Leafy greens can go bad pretty fast. It could become like slimy. The leaves become slimy, and then the whole lettuce goes bad. So how to store it better? So here I have a lettuce. So what you need to do is just take a paper towel. You just wrap the paper towel around the lettuce, and then you just put your lettuce in a container or in a plastic bag. The purpose of wrapping the lettuce around with a paper towel is to absorb the moisture coming from the leaves, because it's that moisture that makes the leaves slimy, and the bacteria will proliferate in a more humid condition. So if you have that paper towel, it's going to absorb that moisture, and there will be less of a good medium to make the bacteria multiply. For the fresh herbs, we want to treat it like a bouquet of flowers. So you want to have like a jar or any container. You want to put a bit of water, like 1 inch or 2 inches of water, and you put your herbs in the jar, and then you want to cover it with a plastic bag, so it becomes like a greenhouse for the herbs, and then you can put it in your fridge, so then it's going to keep for much longer. For the bananas, they tend to ripen very, very fast. So if you don't want to keep on making banana bread with your overripe bananas, you can increase the shelf life. You can prevent it from becoming too ripe too soon by just wrapping the tip of the stem of the banana with saran wrap or aluminum foil, because it's that tip which gets oxidized faster and it ripens the whole banana. So if you want, you can just cover it with aluminum foil, so it could increase the shelf life of your bananas by a few days. Oftentimes we tend to throw out parts of vegetables and fruits that are still edible and that are still very nutritious. So here I have some examples of edible parts that sometimes we tend to throw out. So we're throwing out food, but also like nutrients which we could have, which we would have been able to benefit from. So here we have kale. Sometimes we tend to just rip the leaf from the stem. So it's important to keep those stems. They are good sources of fiber. You can just chop it up and just put it in a stir fry, or you can make soups with it. You can make smoothies. So it's gonna add additional fiber to your diet. When we buy cauliflower, we tend to throw out the leaves, and the leaves are actually very flavorful, and they contain a lot of nutrients. They contain vitamin C, fiber, vitamin K, and they give like a nice crunch to your dishes, to your meals. So it could be a good thing to keep the leaves, and again, you could use it in your stir fry, just chop it up, or you can put it in your smoothies, in your soups. It's gonna be you will be getting actually two vegetables for the price of one, because you get the cauliflower, which is the flower, and then you actually get the leaves. So you're gonna get more value for your money. For the stems of the broccoli, like a lot of people would just throw them out, but they are edible and they are a super rich source of fiber. So just keep them. I usually keep them to put them in my stir fry. If they are a bit too coarse, what you can do is just peel the skin, and then you can just chop off the stems to put it in your recipe. When we buy fresh carrots, we tend to throw out the leaves, but they could be used instead of parsley, for example. They can be used as a garnish, and it's super high in vitamin C as well as fiber. So here we have lemon rinds. Like oftentimes we would just use the juice. So what I do is I grate the rind first before using the juice, and I would dry the rind, and sometimes I would use it to flavor my veggies in a stir fry. So for example, I would add it to, I find it goes really well with asparagus. The rind will be very useful in muffins, so it gives like good flavor to your baked products. Or sometimes what I do is I just use it to flavor my water. So I just put the rind in the water, and it encourages me to drink more water because of the flavor, and it's still natural. It's not like something artificial that I added to flavor my water. For the seeds of squash, like it's a very good source of magnesium, fiber, and even proteins. So all you need is to scoop out the seeds with a spoon. You wash it under tap water, and you just put it on a sheet pan and put it in the oven, and it becomes like crispy and very, very flavorful. Actually, it would be very similar to you buying sunflower seeds. So it could be used in granola, as if you're making it at home. You can just simply eat it as a snack in between meals. So all you need to do is just grill the seeds in the oven. You can drizzle a bit of oil and add any herbs or spices that you like. For the strawberry tops, I usually keep them. Same as with the lemon rind, I would use it to flavor my water, and it gives like a nice flavor, so it keeps me hydrated throughout the day. For your potatoes or sweet potatoes, please do not peel the skin. It's a good source of potassium and fiber as well. And potassium is needed it's very beneficial to decrease blood pressure and for heart health. So it's very nutritious. So keep the skin, just wash the potatoes really well, and you can just chop your potatoes and put them in the oven, or if you're using the potatoes as part of a stew. So now how to add variety to your meals by recycling your leftovers. For example, let's say like you're making a whole chicken. You might be tired of eating the same chicken over and over again. So if you do make a whole chicken, try to recycle the same chicken to make different recipes. For example, you can make a pizza with a pita bread or tortilla bread or even a naan bread, and you can just debone the chicken, put it on top. That's going to be your protein source, and then you can add any veggies that you want in the pizza. With the same chicken, you can make a pasta dish. It could be like a pasta salad with pesto here, and you can just add the chicken. So it's a completely different recipe that you're making with the same ingredient. So it's gonna save you time as well for the preparation of different types of ingredients. So with the same chicken, you can make tacos, you can make fajitas. So you can use different spices here to just stir fry a bit your chicken, the cooked chicken, and you're recycling it again into a completely different recipe. Let's say here you have leftover rice. What can you make with the bland rice? Instead of eating it over and over again, you can make a fried rice, with frozen veggies. You can use that same chicken that you made before, like the whole chicken. You can use the rice to make a rice soup with chicken or shrimps or any other protein sources like beans. You can also make a salad with the rice. You can make a rice pudding as well with the rice. So it gives you much more variety while still using the same ingredient. And that's how I like to do my meal prep as well. I tend to make ingredients ahead of time, but then during the week, I would recycle the ingredient into different recipes. So that brings an end to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found the information relevant and helpful. So thank you for being with us. And I want to say a special thank you as well to Natalie, who helped me put together this presentation, as well as the staff at the Atwater Library. So again, like if you want recipes, if you want to ask questions, anything which wasn't clear in the presentation, feel free to email me or Natalie. So here is the email address of Natalie. Here you have my email address, and I'd be happy to email you back with the feedback that I get. If I have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. So I hope you keep safe and stay healthy, and take care. Bye-bye.